Hello and welcome to this webinar on how to start your own Kangaroo Walk and Talk. The aim of holding the Walk and Talk is to connect people to their local kangaroo mob, to build understanding and protection. Article 5 of the UN Declaration states, we are beholden to protect and care for our unique native kangaroos as part of the Australian family of all living beings. Together, Kangaroos Alive and Back to Country have created the Kangaroo Walk and Talk kit. Today, we will take you through the practicalities of conducting a walk and talk, from advertising permits, the script, and what happens if you don't see any kangaroos. We will speak to Dr. Anthony McKnight and Peter Hewitt from Back to Country, who advise First Nations groups on conducting a kangaroo walk and talk, partnering with your local and Indigenous community, and the blueprint we all need to refer to, the UN Declaration for Kangaroos. But firstly, we'll speak to ecologist Craig Thompson, who has been conducting the Kangaroo Walks and Talks pilot program on Boonwurrung country on the Mornington Peninsula. Hi, Craig.
Morning, Kelda. How are you?
Good. So just to get started, how did you choose a location for your walk and talk?
We have two spots that we could have decided to use down here on Peninsula. We opted with Arthur's Seat. It's a really kind of beautiful place with open picnic grounds. The accessibility was really good as we walks and talks when kangaroos are most active at dusk. And the other location, there was a high chance of kangaroos being injured as people left as they were driving home.
Okay, terrific. Well, let's go through the kit that we've created. So Craig has sort of tested the kit and added to the kit as over the 18 months of the pilot program. He's been conducting the walks and talks. First, we have just a few organiser tips. Now, so first off, approach your local community centre, library or council to support the event. Craig, you've also got in touch with homeschooling groups and schools as well, haven't you?
Yeah, so and I believe a lot of those groups have actually got in contact with us through the local community centre, information centre, and they've been really good at updating our walks and talks on our posters. So we conducted every second of the month. So once we completed that talk, they then update it for us, and it's been really helpful for us and has got a lot of people coming down and seeing us, not only the homeschool groups, but also local tourists to the area as well.
And how have you advertised?
So we mostly advertise through the information centres. We have advertised it on our Facebook page, which is currently a closed Facebook page, but we do have affiliate groups that advertise for us as well through social media platforms.
Terrific. And what I know you've sort of said your perfect size group is 5 to 12 people, but you have done 30 people.
Yeah.
Can you talk about those experiences?
Yeah, we tend to prefer smaller groups, 5 to 12 people. Obviously, it's easy to engage with a smaller group. When you have a larger group, it gets a bit more noisier. It's harder to kind of, I guess, keep engagement of everybody. But needless to say, we will do the larger talks because it's always a great opportunity to educate people about kangaroos that live locally.
Terrific. And the best time to see kangaroos is dawn and dusk, but you have managed to do some other times. Could you talk about how you found kangaroos during the day?
Yeah, so as you kind of alluded to earlier, we've been doing it for about 18 months now. And over that period of time, we've got to know the kangaroos really, really well and their local habitat. So we generally have an idea of out at all times of the day. So while we prefer to do the walks and talks either at dusk or dawn, we do have the capacity to do them during the day, in the afternoon, because we know the mob pretty well now.
Do they tend to be sleeping during the day? Is it,
Yes. They can be. And it's a fairly wooded area where we are, so they do kind of like to hide and lay down in the grass. But they're usually one or two things during the middle of the day. Yeah, they're either kind of resting, lying down, or they're just kind of quietly grazing in very smaller groups. Unlike when they're out at dusk and dawn, they're out in the larger mobs. So during the days, you might find them in smaller groups of maybe 3 to 4.
Yeah. And you've obviously found the dawn, the dusk talks more effective than getting people up early for the dawn.
Yeah. I actually tried to start with the morning walks and talks, and apparently people don't like getting up at 6 a.m. To come out looking at kangaroos. So yeah, I would very much advise that you do the evening ones. It's a great opportunity to sit down and have a dinner and watch kangaroos before or after the walk and talk.
And how do people find you?
So they can contact us through our email, which is Peninsula Kangaroos.
Oh, this is This is part of RSVP. You get them to RSVP through your email as well, don't you?
Because
it's important to get people to commit, or else they may not turn up. Yeah.
Yes. If we kind of advertise that people are going to say yes, we'll come, but then they don't show up, if they actually have to register and book, then they're actually going to keep their reservation. Or if they can't keep their reservation, they're actually going to notify you that they're not going to be able to make it. So yeah, it's really handy when we have a registration
process. Yeah. And how do they find you at the location?
So they find us when they register. I'll send them the locations, which is usually the picnic ground. The other thing that we have is a great big green flag with a kangaroo on it. And we also wear our merchandise advertising who we are. So they're really good ways of getting people to come and find us.
So do you get a few people that just join on the day when they see you with your merchandise? And
yes, so our big green flag is it's probably a 6-foot flag, a 12-foot flag. It stands out and it draws a lot of attention, and people kind of quite curious about what we're up to. So they'll come over and have a chat with us, and they ask if they can come along. And more often than not, it's great to have them come and join us.
Okay. We also we'll talk about behaviour cards a little bit later. Also, one of the important points is that you don't need to know everything. People. You can always say back to people, that's a great question, and discuss ideas with the group of why a kangaroo might be doing something.
That's one of the things why the walks and talks is a really important thing. It's not only an opportunity for us to teach others, but it's also an opportunity for us to kind of watch and see new behaviours. And I have to say, in the 18 months that we've been doing this pilot program, we've seen a lot of behaviours that I never knew about before. It's been really interesting, and some very kind of cute behaviours as well. This really is a great thing to go and do.
So with we advise with the script that it has been written for eastern grey kangaroos. That you adapt the script to the macropods in your area, but also adapt the script to your personality and your interests. Craig, you really like dispelling myths on when you conduct a walk and talk. How do you do that?
So our walks and talks, we usually do the walk talk at the start, and then we'll go do the walk afterwards. Because you don't want to have the walk and talk together. You have sometimes, particularly if you've got that larger group and you start talking amongst the kangaroos, you're going to upset them, disturb them. And the idea is to kind of not to disturb them at all, and just watch their natural behaviour. So the talk comes first, and dispelling the myths, which I do like to do. Usually we'll have an open conversation. So we'll actually ask the participants of some of the, I guess, myths and urban legends that they might hear or know about kangaroos. And that's generally how we'll kind of start, and we'll dispel the myths about kangaroos as those kind of topics or issues are raised. And sometimes a group might be a quiet group, so you might have to prod them.
We also have some facts for people that there's sort of quick things that you can refer to. And we also like people to leave our walk and talk with some knowledge and ways that they can help kangaroos. So we've got some business cards coming, which was Craig's suggestion of because they're easy to hand out when you're out and about to tell people about the walk and talk. So just get in touch with Kangaroos Alive and we can send you some business cards. Okay, to get onto the next part of the kit, we have the behaviour cards, which we recommend to laminate and to bring with you on your walks and talks in case you don't see any kangaroos. But also, if you get a bit lost, there's quite a few pointers to get you going, just to talk to your group about how humans greet each other as opposed to how kangaroos greet each other, and just start people's journey on citizen science. Craig, I know particularly the tree rubbing has been a current one for you.
Yeah, so I never really kind of used the tree rubbing much at all, but more recently we had some landholders kind of saying that kangaroos have been tree rubbing, or actually the better term was ring barking trees and killing trees, and they're kind of using it as a reason why kangaroos should be shot, unfortunately. But what people didn't understand is that this guy has cattle on his property, so it's actually his cattle that are ring barking the trees and not the kangaroo. So just that whole kind of scenario actually brought this the topic up as one of the main focal points, because you do see some kangaroos rubbing trees in there, but unlike on this guy's property, none of the trees are actually ring barked or dying. They're actually in really great health.
One of my favourite cards is this one, because I think a lot of people can really relate to a mob and their own family, and see a bit of themselves with the with their mob.
Yeah, it's actually one interesting fact on that point that we talk about is kangaroos are really the only ground dwelling mammal in Australia that is family orientated. Can't think of any other kind of mammal that's ground based that actually lives in family groups, just the kangaroo. So they're a lot like us in many ways.
We also have the UN Declaration on here, but the UN Declaration has its own page, and we will speak a bit more to Back to Country about the UN Declaration later in the webinar. We also have public liability insurance and a waiver, and this came about when Craig was asked to conduct some field trips for a Nature Stewards program. Craig, can you talk a bit more about the process?
Yeah, so the Victoria National Parks Association, we're kind of doing some ecology courses, and they reached out to me to kind of do some education about a fauna, and obviously the key issue for myself was kangaroos, and we've been doing these walks and talks. So part of that process was we had to make sure that we had all the appropriate permits. So yeah, we've now kind of put in an application to do commercial walks and talks. And in order to do that, we've had to go through Parks Victoria, and through that they require, a 15-minute phone call, just kind of a basic interview about what you want to do, giving us some guidelines about pricing, that kind of stuff, and what they expect in return, and also to provide maps. But the big one was, public liability insurance, which was $20 million public liability insurance cover, which Kangaroo Alive has set up. And along with that also came the waiver, which is really, really important. And I believe Kangaroos Alive will make that available to everyone who's doing that.
So yeah, anyone can get in touch with us and we can talk through the waiver and the public liability insurance if you need it for the location that you want to run a walk and talk, or if you want to apply for a tour guide license.
And it may vary from state to state. What happens here in Victoria obviously might be different in New South Wales and Queensland, for instance. So I'd recommend to kind of check with your state government authority about the processes and requirements that are needed.
And you think sort of a general rule is more than sort of 20 to 30 people. You might need a special permit if you're in a state park or on national park land.
Yeah, exactly. And the other really important thing along with that is obviously the first aid certificates.
Yeah.
So I think the current condition in the waiver is that we have to have at least 2 people who have first aid.
Yeah. So I think it's only one needs to be there, but so because the walk cannot go ahead if you don't have someone with first aid.
Yeah.
So we also have direction signs, which just so people can find you and know where to meet. Especially if people can come from a few different directions. For advertising, we have Instagram and Facebook stories that you can use and adapt. We have a brochure you can put the details on and leave at your community centre, library or council. Poster you can put up around town, just put the information on. So all these are downloadable and printable on the Kangaroos Live website. Another thing we have is the 20 portraits of 24 of Australia's 70 macropod species. It's nice for people to see all the different types of kangaroos and wallabies and macropods there are in Australia, and understand that it's not just one species. And then we have a respect poster. Now this came about recently after some things that Craig witnessed while he was conducting walks and talks. You want to talk about that, Craig?
Yes, and unfortunately the problems persist. So the first one obviously is people walking in the state parks and even in the national parks with their dogs, sometimes on lead and sometimes off lead. Unfortunately, kangaroos don't like dogs. Dogs are a predator to the kangaroos, and it does upset them, particularly up in Arthur's Seat when you've kind of got what is traditionally a creche group, so mothers with joeys. It can really upset the mob, and it's really kind of disruptive when you have people out doing walks and talks and you've got people conducting activities that upset and disrupt the natural behaviours. And it's a bit of a hard one because people who usually come out are very kind of passionate and care a lot about our kangaroos, and they do get upset when they see kangaroos being disrupted and kind of moving away because of the threat. So people can be quite vocal about it. So it's a bit of a hard one to deal with, but you just got to be calm and just tell your people to kind of stand by as you go off and actually have a polite and cordial conversation, and in a non-threatening way. Just kind of explain why it's not a great idea to have dogs around. And recently I kind of walked up and I said, I know it's a really beautiful place, but there's lots of places on the Mornington Peninsula where you can actually walk dogs, and unfortunately this isn't one of those places, because as you've just seen, your dog's upset the kangaroos. And those people are actually kind of took it on the chin and kind of like understood why I said what I said, and they apologized and they moved on with their dog. So it can be done, but it's also kind of just knowing and seeing the behavior and the demeanor of the person who's actually breaching. The other problem that we have is people riding bikes. So they've just started building a lot of mountain bike tracks in this park, and people do ride their bikes through the mobs, which can also be quite distressing to see.
Okay. So just to reiterate, we really want everyone to adapt the kit to suit their personalities and the species around them. So you may want to talk about the local ecology, focus on kangaroo family structures, or dispel myths about kangaroos, or a combination of things. Or you might want to do 20 minutes of observation and then have a yarning circle afterwards to discuss what you learnt. Craig, what are your top 3 tips for someone wanting to do a walk and talk?
My top 3 tips is get to know your mob first, really. I think spending a bit of time out there and just kind of watching their behaviours, getting to know where they are at all times of the day. So if you are asked to do one during the day for a school group like that, you actually know where to go. Most of all, enjoy yourself. It's a really great opportunity, a lot of fun, and it's a really awesome time to engage into what is an animal that we celebrate, globally, and to teach these people why they're worth protecting and caring for. Thirdly, can I get back to you on that one, Kelda?
Yeah, that's fine. I think they're fabulous tips, and thanks very much for your time today, Craig. We will, if anyone's got any extra questions for Craig, please send them in, and you can email info@kangaroosalive.org, and we can get back to you with the answers. So we'll say goodbye to Craig, and we'll
Thanks, Coda.
Now have a chat to back to country. I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Anthony McKnight and Arbakul Gamaroy and Ewan Mann, and Peter Hewitt from Back to Country, whose mission is to heal country and people through providing opportunities for Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal peoples to learn about Yuin culture. They worked closely with the late Uncle Max over many years, who was a key advocate for kangaroos and the author of the Kangaroo Yuin Declaration. Peter and Anthony, can you please tell us a little bit more about Back to Country?
Back to Country was an Aboriginal non-for-profit organisation that was created by Uncle Max. That's one of the legacies that he's left us, one of many. And basically what Back to Country is about is the title itself. It's about bringing Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people back to country, that we take care of it, that it's about, that's the entity that brings all people together. It's not about people, it's about bringing Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people back together to take care of country. And Kangaroo is one example of that. How can we as Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people work together to take care of that significant totem?
So what can we, please, Peter, please introduce yourself.
Sorry, just quickly going to introduce myself. I'm a Jerringer Ewan man from my mother's side, and as part of that little contribution, I'm working with Back to Country and Uncle Max, and my contribution has been to support the ceremonial space where the declaration was shared as part of World Kangaroo Day. And last year, we worked towards handing over the kangaroo or buru message stick to New South Wales Parliament House. That was shared on the 24th of October last year. And my design, my story is placed on that message stick, which is grounded in caring, protecting, and holding respect for buru, because acknowledging that ancient songline, but it's also grounded in that message stick holds to Parliament House, acknowledging our cultural law and the ancientness that sits within those stories and sharings of culture. There's a lot in the message stick, but that's just a little taste of some of that story there too. So thanks, Kelda.
Oh, it was such a special day last year. I was very honoured to be there at the handing over. Now, could we just talk about what we can learn for observing kangaroos in the wild?
We can learn a lot. We can't tell you what you can learn because the kangaroo is going to be the teacher. So in a way, that's the approach that we've been gifted from, not just from Uncle Max, but the old people before him, has gifted this knowledge of that observation. So during the tours, you'd be given time to observe the kangaroo and see what the kangaroos are teaching you, whether it's about how to work in a community, because often they live together in a family and community. So they can teach us how to be family members, how to be community members, how to look after the young, and what they're connected to. So those kangaroos are connected to, as you can see, they eat a lot of grass, their head's down a lot. So they'd be really knowledgeable around grasses and different things and trees, and they have their own medicines. So they can teach us a lot about self. They can teach us a lot about country, and they can teach us a lot about what a kangaroo is and the obligations that the kangaroos have, and then what are our obligations towards the kangaroo. So, but it's the buru that can teach us.
Yeah, I think that language, mob is a group of kangaroos. So that understanding of family, how they interrelate, how they hold that space. I think they can also teach us when to slow down. I think they're pretty good at laying in the sun and just enjoying the space, being grounded, slowing down as people. But yeah, how they hold their ancient songlines and how they teach their young which grasses to eat, how to behave, is an important observation that's sitting with me as we start.
Fabulous. What advice would you give to First Nations communities that want to start running their own walks and talks?
Oh, that's a tricky question, because I can't tell. I can only speak on my behalf of what I can do and what I've been taught. So the First Nation people themselves would have an idea of what they would like to do and how they would like to do it. So yeah, that's a tricky question. Pete might jump in and I'll think about that a little bit more as well.
Yeah, if Unc said, I would like you to take these people for a little walk on country, I would just invite them and say, this is how we knock on the door before walking on country. And each space will have their own protocols of how to knock on the door to respectfully start to walk and observe country. And yeah, so I think it's probably more so important to invite non-First Nations peoples to observe how our First Nations communities knock on the door respectfully and walk respectfully on country. That's what comes through for me when I hear that question. And
if I'm getting the question right, I think Uncle Max wrote the Buru Declaration, and I think the permission to use that Buru Declaration as part of the tour is just the First Nations group to recognise that it was written by Uncle Max Harrison, a senior lawman from Yuin country, and that's all they ask, is that showing that recognition of that's where the declaration is from. He's given permission to share that declaration to take care of the kangaroo, whatever mob you're from. That's for Yuin. And if other mobs want to use that declaration, that simple respect protocol of recognising where that declaration is from, that's kind of what's all that's needed, because each mob will have their own protocols, as Pete was saying, and own processes that we can't comment on. But as Pete said, non-Aboriginal people or First Nations people build those respectful relationships with the varying communities that they're working with. And it's all about that relationship. And it's a give and take relationship. It's a reciprocal relationship. But to me, the focus shouldn't be on people. It should be on country. So as we started, it's about non-Aboriginal people working with the leadership and the guidance of Aboriginal people to take care of Buru. So it's a two-way relationship.
So what do you think is a good way for non-Aboriginal people to approach the traditional owners to partner on doing a walk and talk in their area?
For me, no one can own the mother. So I would call myself a traditional custodian, because you can't own the mother, but I've got to respect other mobs that call themselves traditional owners. So you've got to respect that. I think we're talking about the same thing, but just the semantics of the English language. But that semantics also has a whole lot of meaning. For me, we're the custodians. My advice is, as I alluded to earlier, it's about building that relationship, and that relationship will take time, because trust has got to develop. Over the 200 plus years, there's not a lot of trust. So that trust is important. Aboriginal people over the years have had that trust developed, and then people, as soon as they get their certificate or get a business opportunity, then they cut out the Aboriginal people. They take the knowledge and put it into a consumer mindset. So it's about building that relationship first, building that trust, and then working together on who holds what obligation and what responsibility in that business relationship, because that's partly what we're looking at here is forming a relationship to take care of Buru, but at the same time there's a commercial relationship linked to as well, which is proven to work really well with the whales, to take care of the whales. But at the same time, how do Aboriginal people have those custodianship, have that leading role in that relationship? So that just will develop over time.
Yeah, good, authentic, respectful yarns, going in with that open mind, just as that walk and talk we'll do and learning from Buru. Community will want to feel respected and open. If that trust is there, like any relationship, that will co-develop and build those little steps together.
Yeah,
is what I'm sitting with. Yeah.
So it's basically, for me, if it was me in this, because I can only speak on my own behalf. It was me and the non-Aboriginal people that I'm working with. We'd build that relationship based on our observations of Buru.
Mm-hmm.
So the kangaroo would lead us on how we'd hold that relationship in taking care of Buru. So we'd learn from observing Buru how our relationship should be and how it should take place. So then the focus is still on the kangaroo, not on the human element.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a good spot to get people to sit with and to think about and to talk about.
Yeah. Fabulous. And if a non-Aboriginal person wanted to start up a walk and talk and there were no partners around, what's important for them to remember when connecting to country?
That we're putting the kangaroo first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that opportunity to sit and ask country for permission. This country's given us our protocols to sit and yarn with country about the intention of respecting, holding that responsibility to care, and invite other people in to observe and learn from Buru is a really important one. And I think that elder in time will, if they is not there in the immediate space, should present itself in that respectful way.
And we can go back to the declaration.
Yeah.
So non-Aboriginal people just go back to the declaration and follow the declaration. And that's their blueprint. That's their blueprint on how to work in this space. And then continually learning with the kangaroo, and then always putting out the welcome mat to non-Aboriginal people to form that relationship. So the right person or the right people will turn up at the right time. So you could start it if you haven't got that relationship, start it. But like I said, use the statement or the declaration, observe Buru, have that relationship with country, but always putting that welcome mat out for Aboriginal people to come on. And then you've got to start that relationship again with the third group that will have a leadership role as well. So the Buru would have a leadership role. The non-Aboriginal person needs to find out where their leadership role is in the relationship. And then the Aboriginal people will find their leadership, their role in that relationship as well. So it's a balanced relationship, and that will develop in time, and the leadership roles may change in time as well.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for your wisdom today. Is there anything else you'd like to add to people that are interested in starting up walks and talks?
I think it's such a great opportunity to tune in and connect in and have that observation of one of our ancient creatures who have held this space for so long, and also it's a symbol that's utilised across this place we now call Australia. One of our biggest companies hold it on its tail, but understanding the true essence of that totem for me is really important, so that all humans who walk this place we now call Australia to understand that relationship. It can teach everyone so much.
Yeah. I think I'd just bring it back to respect. If you're there to respect the kangaroo and respect the declaration, and to respect country, it's fine. If you're there purely for a commercial entity, a commercial venture, then I'd ask you to go somewhere else. And I know that's quite brutal, but I think that's where the state we're at. If you're here to take care of the kangaroo, please be a part of this relationship. But if you're there purely for self-interest and money, then yeah, I'd go somewhere else. That would, and I mean that respectfully. But I think we've got to put that up front and be honest in this context. So and I wish people all the best in learning from Kangaroo and working with the Kangaroo and with Aboriginal people if that happens, and back to country members when available and appropriate, they will be quite happy to help in those relationships. So I need to state that we're very willing to work and help when we've got the capacity. So looking forward to, if there's any questions, Kelda, if you've got any questions, I'm happy to sit with you again and we can answer some of those questions, or create another time when we can make it face to face with everyone else over Zoom land or whatever this is called.
If anyone has any questions they want to send in for Back to Country, please email info@kangaroosalive.org and we'll find a way to answer your questions. So thank you both, Peter and Mako, for joining us today. Can't wait to keep building our partnership and seeing more people appreciating kangaroos across Australia.
Awesome.
Thanks, Kelda.
Thanks, Kelda.
Thank you very much to everyone for joining us today. We're constantly building on the Walk and Talk kit. If you have any behaviour cards you'd like to see added or anything else that will help other people conducting walks and talks, please get in touch. And just always remember that you're holding a walk and talk to protect kangaroos through education. If you refer to the UN Declaration for Kangaroos for guidance, you can't go wrong. We also suggest celebrating World Kangaroo Day on October 24 by conducting a walk and talk in your area. And if you do that, please put it on the World Kangaroo Day calendar. And we can also help you with the protocol letter for using the UN Declaration. Just head to the Kangaroos Alive website. You will see on the UN Declaration page, there is the protocol letter there. And you'll also see some other fabulous things like the declaration ceremony and the message stick ceremony that Peter was talking about. This is the World Kangaroo Day website. I'm sure you've all checked out the amazing photos on the photo competition. And this is the calendar. So there's quite a few events on the calendar. But if you're holding a walk and talk on World Kangaroo Day, there is one at Garrowweed that they're launching their walks and talks on World Kangaroo Day. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And with any more questions, please email info@kangaroosalive.org. Thank you very much.